next speakers we have here, we're actually going to have three. First up, Vinay, Bhagat, founder and CEO of Trust Radius. We have Loretta Jones, VP of Marketing at Insightly, and Megan Roth, Marketing Manager at Insightly. They're going to be talking about amplifying your customer success with reviews. Give them a round of applause, please.
Thanks, everyone, for attending this session. I know we are the item standing between you and lunch, so I hope we can make it as compelling and interesting as possible for you to stick around. So thank you, Loretta and Megan, for joining me here today. Let me just start by asking you a question. When you make a decision in your personal lives, let's say you're planning a family vacation or you're buying a consumer product, how many of you use reviews to help inform those decisions? Just please raise your hand. That's a pretty universal phenomenon. Now, how about when you're making a professional decision, when you're buying a piece of technology or hiring an agency? Just think about a business context decision. How many of you currently use user reviews to help make those decisions? A reasonable number, but still fewer. So what we're seeing clearly is a crossover in purchasing behavior where each of us are consumers in our personal lives, and we're taking that behavior into the workplace and trying to find social proof to help make those decisions. Now, what we're going to talk about today is how user reviews are really, in many ways, a glue between the customer success function, marketing, clearly well represented here today, but also sales and products as well. They are a way not just to amplify your customer success, get customers on the record, and help, again, convey the value of your solution to prospective customers, but they also are a strategic way to have a very strong and accurate and real-time pulse on your customers. So it can be yet another input in terms of understanding customer sentiment, both at a macro level to understand whether it's trending in the right direction, but also at a micro level to understand if there are specific things about your product or offering that you need to address. Let me first just orient you about what a typical business software review actually looks like. So this is a typical review for Insightly. Just as a way of introduction of Insightly, they are a very successful small business CRM. They have about 300,000 customers. As a result, they very much have a one-to-many customer success model. But a typical review of their platform involves one of their customers answering a series of structured questions, talking about things like the likelihood to recommend, pros and cons of the product, rating the product on different feature elements, but also answering custom questions that they desire in their marketing to sort of capture social proof around. So one of the things that the Insightly team really wanted to understand from their customers were what were the business outcomes that they were trying to derive from their solution. So that's clearly quite different to a consumer review. In the consumer context, most consumers are given a blank canvas to write what they want. But in a business context, we find it's very helpful to guide the reviewer through a series of structured questions in order to illuminate key value propositions and to have much more structured, cogent feedback. The other thing that's different about a business review is that software changes very quickly. So the analogy I make is that when you stay at a hotel, let's say, and you write a review on TripAdvisor, it's kind of like sending a postcard to say, this was my experience. It was a one-shot in time. Whereas a business review, in the case of a piece of software, it's much more like a living, breathing journal. We actually proactively re-engage with reviewers over time to both send them signals about how their content is being valued and appreciated by their audience, but also to encourage them to update their review over time. So that's just important as a frame of reference. Now let's talk a little bit about how companies are actually using user reviews, and then I'm going to turn over to the Insightly team to talk about how they've used user reviews inside their organization. So once you've accumulated a body of user reviews, one of the things that really first shows up is that it starts to impact your public search reputation. I'm sure most of you, as businesses, have a presence on Glassdoor, and most prospective recruits vet you on Glassdoor before they make a decision to join the company, and they might type in the name of your product and the search term reviews. In the case of B2B, they also might be comparing you to another company, so comparing product A versus product B. Once you've accumulated a base of in-depth reviews on a site like ours, that content starts to show up high in your organic search rank. So in this example, the number 1 and the number 2 organic search results for Tableau are their reviews on TrustRadius. It also starts to influence your position competitively against other products. So one of the most common things that people like to do on review sites is compare products side by side. So having a robust review presence, again, gives people that objective way to understand how different customers in aggregate think about a product and how it stacks up. But importantly, reviews are not just for review sites. Having an accumulated body of social proof also enables a business to be more fluent at communicating its message with prospective customers through its own sales and marketing channels. In the case of Insightly, they have incorporated reviews on their own websites. In this case, they're incorporating it on their homepage. And what we found is that businesses who incorporate reviews on key conversion pages, so if you have trials or demos or pricing request pages, or even if you have a digital product that's sold online, incorporating that kind of social proof into those types of pages can lift conversion 20, 30, 50, even as much as 70%. So it's incredibly important if you have happy, successful customers to not just give them an opportunity to voice their satisfaction with the product and give you feedback, but also to proactively start to use that content in your marketing. And that also applies to demand generation. So if you have colleagues who are in demand gen teams who are trying to generate leads using tactics like email and digital advertising, one strategy is to actually turn the reviews into different forms of content assets that you can use proactively in outbound communications with prospects. Another way that reviews are being used are to streamline references. How many of you run businesses where you get asked for references from your sales team, on a periodic basis? And how many of you love facilitating references? Okay, it's a pain, quite frankly, right? It's a pain for everybody involved. It's a tax on the customer. It slows down sales cycles. Salespeople always feel like they have to wait until an opportunity is super qualified before they can use a reference. And it's yet one more thing that you as customer service professionals and customer success professionals have to contend with. So if you have a robust body of structured product reviews that are very rich and authoritative, and you can send prospects there to read those, not only do they trust that content more because it's more than one data point, but they have the ability to interact with these customers in self-service. So for many companies now, having a robust body of reviews is greatly streamlining how they handle their reference process as well, which is a big value point. And then certainly also progressive companies now are starting to put social proof into the sales process. So businesses like HubSpot, for example, have incorporated and trained their reps on how to use reviews proactively based upon use case and demographics to send reviews proactively to prospects in advance of them asking for a reference. And they found that in their closed-won analysis, about half of their customers say that the presence of user reviews in the purchasing process had a material influence on why they bought the solution. And then clearly, having a continuous body of new content coming into your organization provides rich insights for you to understand, again, the pulse of your customers and where you may need to improve. I'd like to now maybe ask Loretta and Megan to share their insights from Insightly and how they're using user reviews inside their company.
Sure. So just to give you a little bit of context, we have a freemium business model. So most of our business is transactional. We have about 1 million users. And so that's part of the reason why reviews were very important to us. Because in many ways, we don't have the business model where we have, sales reps or customer success reps that have like maybe 5 or 10 customers, right? Because we have such a freemium business model with small businesses, it's really about the masses, right? So for us, reviews are a way I think of reviews as almost like a digital word of mouth, if you will. So it's a way for us to actually engage with our customers and have them really give us frank feedback on what they think about the product and what their user experience was. And part of the reason why it's also valuable for us is because it's almost like a neutral third party. So they feel more relaxed and at ease to kind of say what they really think. And obviously we're thrilled when we get positive reviews, but when we get negative reviews, it's really kind of a learning experience, right? Because we can take that information, we can take it to the customer success team, we can take it to the product team, we can take it to the engineering team, and we can say, look, this is what our users are saying online, basically in a public forum, and this is kind of how we have to address this situation or address this issue.
Yeah, to speak on that more, I think it's really important when you do see a negative review, and maybe it's, since we're a CRM, we have tons of different types of features within our CRM, but if it's something that we actually do have within the product, then we maybe need to look at how customer success engages our customer, or maybe the different assets we produce, if we have to produce more educational content, if we have to do more webinars, just to make sure that people know the full spectrum of our product features. So that's how we tie reviews into customer success.
Right, actually, just to play off that.
Yeah.
So we've had reviews where people have said, hey, I wish you had this feature, and we actually do have this feature, but they don't know it, right? So that tells us that we kind of need to do an education campaign on this feature or maybe other features in the product. So it's more, as Vinay said, it kind of transcends all different departments in your organization to kind of get a good collection of reviews from your customers. And obviously the more you have, then from a marketing perspective, the more ammo you have when you go to engineering and you say, hey, I know this is on the product roadmap, but you need to maybe think about moving this up on the product roadmap or something like that.
Yeah.
So another question that we often get asked is, how do you actually go about accumulating reviews? And there really are two core strategies. One is to run campaigns. So in the example on the left, we've worked with Insightly to actually run a kind of campaign to their customers. We do use a financial incentive to kind of motivate response. In a consumer context, you can get away without using incentives because a 1% or less response rate is acceptable. In most B2B contexts, you're striving for a higher participation rate, and we find that incentives are necessary to drive the requisite level of response. But when we run a campaign, we're very clear to people that we're seeking at least 15 minutes of their time to write something of quality. The average reviewer actually spends 22 minutes writing an initial review, and then often re-engages 3 to 4 times over the period of a year to augment and add to their review. So it's a way to actually accumulate very rich content. And the reason why people write reviews, the gift certificate is a reason for them to do it here and now. But those who choose to write reviews, for the most part, are looking to actually share feedback. They see it as a way to provide feedback to the company. They may be advocates of the product and just be very happy and desirous to share their experience with their colleagues and peers. It's translating a behavior that they already exhibit in their personal lives if they've reviewed on Yelp or TripAdvisor to a business context. And for many of them, as professionals, it's a way to also build up their resume. We see some professionals writing really very detailed reviews. Some of the reviews on our site are over 3,000 words. And we see them actually linking to those reviews in their LinkedIn profile. So that's sort of one methodology of driving reviews, is by running a campaign. And typically, it's common to see between an 8 and a 20% response rate. Insightly had, I think, north of a 15% response rate in the campaigns that we ran with them. A second methodology is using what we call a one-click rating, which is like a public NPS score. So having a little widget like this that you can embed into your UI, into your interactions with people. That could be a tech support interaction. In this case, Marketo's using it when they sign people up for their field marketing, their customer marketing events. But it's a very lightweight interaction that takes someone just 20 seconds to rate the product, authenticate through LinkedIn, and that serves a couple of purposes. One, it helps accumulate more statistical mass and data around people giving a likelihood to recommend score, in other words, a public NPS. But we also then convert these people to reviewers and do so at a rate of about 50 to 60%. So embedding that into your customer interactions reminds them that you are seeking their feedback. And again, the value of having it happen in a public venue versus a private venue is you actually get to get content that can actually help amplify your success. And we also find that because we give people anonymous options as well, and because it's being done on a third-party site, we're often able to drive much higher participation rates than in the context of a private NPS survey, and because we're using incentives as well. So it's pretty common, again, to drive on a campaign basis north of an 8% response. Over the course of a year, using this embedded technique, it's fairly common to drive north of a 30% participation rate. And mostly when you run NPS surveys, if you can get a 5 to 10% response, you're doing quite well. Plus, we find that the responses tend to be more normative. Often with NPS surveys, in my experience, is that you often get the polls responding, the detractors and the promoters, and it's hard to get a uniform response in the middle. But the use of incentives and the fact that it's coming from a third party where there's another reason, the participation in a review site, for people to respond tends to drive a more representative response. Do you want to share about how you're accumulating content, and what are some of your thoughts in terms of how you're going to do so in the future?
Oh, yeah. So currently we're doing, well, the first time that we started with Trust Radius, we did a campaign to our customers, an email marketing campaign, and we did some social campaigns around it. But as we grow, we want to be able to engage people that actually use the product. So partnering with our customer success team, they have one-on-ones with customers that are over 5 users. So when people take these one-on-ones, they get a survey after asking how did it go, getting feedback, and then what we're going to do is integrate that, ask for a review at the end of the survey. So we're not only getting people who are obviously active with us, but have knowledge about the product and can hopefully give us a really great in-depth review that will be valuable to marketing, to sales, and to us as well.
Oh, yeah, as Vinay showed you, we're also using it on our website as well, just the reviews. It's actually almost a widget, and it goes to his point about kind of reviews are a living, breathing thing because they're just always refreshed, so that's actually nice. We don't have to really worry about kind of monitoring it. So that's another place we're doing it, and then we've also included some of the static reviews in some of our nurture emails as well.
Also, another thing, we have in-app messaging, and so what we're going to do and really excited about is be able to cater the questions. Maybe if we need more, sales information or some sales quotes that we could repurpose, we could cater the questions that way and do some in-app messaging, maybe around when people use our sales management tools, opportunity management, to get feedback about how Insightly has, helped them in that way. So you can do more focused reviews, and with our in-app messaging, we can do it more focused on people who are actually using those tools.
Yeah, and a review really should be considered a living, breathing document, again, more like a journal. So if you've been successful in garnering someone to actually write that initial review, you can absolutely send them down pathways where you get them to augment their review over time. So if they're using, let's say you introduce a new feature set and you know which customers are using that feature set, you can target and ask of those people to kind of add to their existing review and talk about that. So it's a great, rapid and dynamic way to get customer feedback and get customers on the record, again, in a public venue where that content isn't just great private feedback for your company, but it's a way to actually amplify your success. So before we kind of do Q&A, just wanted to kind of wrap with 3 key themes that the entire Insightly team shared with me in terms of their key takeaways on embarking on a review program. First and foremost, beyond a marketing strategy, reviews provide a very authentic pulse on your customers. Think of it as a live, continuous, in-the-field focus group to get customer insights, both at a macro theme level, but also on a micro level around features and facets of your operation. Critical feedback, while it may feel challenging, it is the world we live in today. I firmly believe that you have to embrace transparency, and as you can see, I believe that truth sells. And it's a learning opportunity, and I credit companies like Insightly who embrace it as such and don't try and shy away from it, and instead use it to steer their organization. They use it as an input into their product roadmap. They use it as an input to determine where they have areas to improve documentation in their product, etc. And Loretta made a really good point in our planning call that you can't just treat it as a one-shot thing. This is part of running your business today. As a modern, customer-centric organization, you have to be consistent. You have to think about making this an embedded part of how you go to market, both in terms of sourcing feedback on a continuous basis, and that's why I encourage companies to think about the embedded model of driving continuous ratings and reviews and not just viewing it as a one-shot thing where you drive some reviews and you're done. That just doesn't work. You need that continuous feedback. And then secondly, trying to understand how to incorporate it proactively into your go-to-market efforts. Yes, we have digital buyers who are more savvy, particularly as more millennials are in the workplace influencing purchasing decisions. Google is their friend. They are used to using social proof to vet decisions. But truthfully, most tech companies, B2B companies, you still have salespeople. You still have to sell your products. They don't just get bought. So proactively harnessing that content in sales, in marketing, is critically important. And again, having fresh, continuous content is part of your business. Loretta and Megan, would you like to share any kind of closing thoughts before we take questions?
I think the last point about consistency is pretty key because really it's a relationship with your customers, right? So you want to have that kind of ongoing dialogue with your customers, again, especially for our business because it's a freemium model, it's very transaction based. But I think any business, whether it's our business model or a different type of business model, you really want to have that engagement with your customers. I mean, I firmly believe that I would rather have someone tell me that they don't like my product than have someone tell me nothing at all, right? Because the people where you're hearing nothing from them, you don't even know what's going on with them, right? And in our business model, typically the people that you don't hear anything from are the ones that are most likely to churn, right? So I'd rather have someone engaged, maybe even negatively, and see if I can turn them around than not at all.
Yeah, to that point, actually, we're now starting to work with Marketo around their renewal cycle. So, clearly, as your account base grows, sometimes there are accounts you have a firm handle on one way or the other, but there are others that you're a little bit dark on. So reviews can be yet another signal as to someone's renewal propensity as well. So it's both color at a specific account level in terms of upsell potential, renewal potential, but again, macro feedback about where you've got to improve as a company as well.